Hi, I'm Kez, also known as Chameleon Makeup. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be reviewing the Martine Cosmetics eyeshadow palettes. Martine Cosmetics is an independent brand that I didn't really know much about until I think it was probably just over a year ago. They did have a few palettes prior to that, but it was their first Halloween collection that I noticed that really caught my eye, and since then I've pretty much bought every single palette that has come out. So I wanted to share my love of the brand with you and give you a little bit of insight into what it's like. Firstly, it is a company that is based in France, and so when you look at the Instagram page, a lot of it is in French, but it does have a translation. The good thing is though that Beauty Bay also do them, so you can purchase them direct from there in the UK, which is usually what I do, but you can also have them shipped in from Martine as well. But looking at the price difference, there's not really a great deal in it, so I usually wait until Beauty Bay gets the release. This was the original palette that came out that caught my attention. For a start, the packaging is amazing. It comes in this little box. It has got this lovely shimmery logo on. It's called 669, that's the name of the palette, which is on the back there, and it was a Halloween edition. Not only was the packaging beautiful, but the shadows really caught my eye as well. So inside you've got all these beautiful shadows. You can see that there's quite a good mix here. You've got shimmer shades, and obviously well loved. You've also got some mattes as well, and there's some sort of glittery shades. So there's a whole range of different forms of formulas here. And what I've noticed about them is most of the shadows are named after girls' names, and then the occasional one is a male name, but they are all names. So we've got Sabrina up the top here, which is this dark brown shade, obviously named after our favourite witch. Zelda, Seraphina, which I think was a goddess if I remember rightly. We've got Rebecca, Mercredi, which actually translates to Wednesday, probably named after Wednesday Addams, Freya. And you can see when I show you Freya, some lights it looks pink, and other lights it looks gold. That's down to it being a duochrome, so it changes shade, which is lovely. We've got Ursula, named after the famous sea witch, with a nice glittery thing. Lavina, Willow, which I'm thinking is named after the Buffy character. Melinda, Tabitha and Petula. Some of these again are witch names from Bewitched. Then we've got Helena, Cornelia, Medusa. Now Medusa is also, I don't know whether it's a multi-chrome or a duochrome, can't really tell. It looks green in the pan, but it also, if I tilt it that way, but also if I try and tilt it to show you like that, it's also purple. So when I'm looking at the pan directly on, it's purple, but when the camera sees it, it's green. So that is a really strong reflect there. Then we've got Hilgard, Euphemia, and again, this shade is completely different in different lights. So it looks red here, and if I tilt it, it also looks orange. Excuse my cat stalking us in the background. And there's Annabelle as well. You can see why I was quite bewitched with this palette when I first saw it. It's also got this embossing, which is something that I've noticed a lot of makeup brands are doing now. Jeffree Star was the one I noticed it with first. I'm not to say that other brands didn't do it, but that's the one that I really noticed it with. But this one has got on the logo that is on the box. I'm surprised it wasn't 666, but I'm sure there's a reason for that. What I also really love about this palette in particular is that the shades are quite grungy. So not only is it perfect for Halloween, but it's just an all-round darker palette. And although generally I don't look very gothy, I do like doing sort of dark gothic-y looks, and so it really works well for that. But obviously looking good isn't the important thing, it's whether or not the eyeshadows perform. So that's what I'm also going to show you in this palette. If I just do the first few swatches, I'll show you. Pick up the pigment on each one. This is just one dip into the pan on each one. So that is the first one, that is Sabrina. That is Zelda, the shimmery one. Seraphina, Rebecca and Mercredi. That was such a tiny sort of dip into it, so you can tell from that that the shades are really, really pigmented. Now when it comes to Freya, sometimes with these shimmers, when you actually put your fingers into them, it leaves like an oily residue and makes it more unworkable. So for this one, for Freya, I am going to swatch it, but I'm going to use one of these first, just still dipping it in very lightly, but I just wanted to sort of pick it up and show you properly what it looks like without damaging the shade. And that's what it comes out like. Ursula, that's the black one. Then Lavinia, Willow, Melinda. So starting there, that's Ursula. Now, I don't know if you can see up close, but it has actually got glitter in that one. It's very subtle, but it's really nice. So when it's moving around, you can see it. Lavinia, that's the other one. What I really like about this one is that it's like a blue-black. And when you look at it in the pan, it's the same shade you see on your finger. I have mentioned in previous videos that sometimes when you get these shadows and you swatch them, they're completely different to what they look like in the pan, which can be quite disappointing. Willow is kind of like a charcoal grey, but it does have maybe a hint of brown in there. And Melinda, I would say, is quite a nice sort of bronzy brown. So that's those ones. You can tell looking at the pans which ones need finger swatches and which ones are the ones that are slightly more prone to grease. So we've now got Tabitha there, Petula, which is a really nice plum red, Helena, which you can see again has a little bit of a reflect. It's mainly purple, but there's just hints of blue in there. And Cornelia, that's kind of a really unusual shade. It's sort of like a gunmetal silver, I'd say. Medusa, it comes out more purple, I think, on the applicator, but you can definitely see the blue in there. It's very hard sometimes to catch reflects, but it really is a beautiful shade. Then we've got Hilgard, which is kind of like a, I'd say it's a brown, but I think it's got hints of plum in it as well. The other colour flick one is Euphemia, which sort of looks like a browny shade, but is probably more of a reddy bronze, depending on the light you've got it in. And then there's Annabelle as well, which is the black one. So all of them have really strong pigment. So you can imagine when I got this palette, how excited I was to find out not only does it look fantastic, but it also holds up pigment-wise. And that's where my love of the brand started. One of the other ones was this one. Now this is called 1988. It comes in the shape of an old style video, which I think is really, really great. This is what I mean. The packaging is just beautiful. And when you get into it, it does look like an old cassette tape. When you look in there, it's a palette full of brights, which fantastic. Again, mostly women's names in here. In fact, I think this one is all women. And if you look, it sort of has got a range of colours in. So you've got the blues in there, and then you've got the yellows and the greens, all sort of very neon-y, reflective of the 1980s. Then the pinks and the reds. And there's a couple of sort of transition-y shades there at the end. And of course the coral, which you expect from the 80s. I'm just going to swatch them for you, and I'll give you the names as I go, so I don't have to repeat myself. So the first few we've got Helene, which is a very, very turquoise, proper 80s blue, I would say. Now, although it looks very matte, it's not powdery. That doesn't leave any residue when you use it, which is really good. Kathy is a complement of it, and it's that sort of baby blue shimmer that was around in the 80s. And then we've got, I think it's a Lali or Lali, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, and it's sort of like a neon yellow. And then Benedict, or I don't know how they pronounce it, but that is like a purple, as you can see. And again, it's that retro-y sort of neon-y shade, because we know that the neons were all out in the 80s. So going along, we have Joanna, which is that sort of orange colour. And then this is a shimmer that's in the palette, and this is Adeline, I'm not sure which it is. And then you've got Melanie and Aileen, or Aline. Now, the thing I noticed about this one, being one of the earlier ones, it's got beautiful shimmers, hasn't got any duochromes in it. But then and again, there wasn't really a lot of duochrome around in the 80s. You've got Jill. Now, although this looks matte, it's actually a shimmer. So I don't know if you can see it up close, but it does have a shimmer to it. And then we've got Gael, I think it is, Virginie and Magali. I think the Magali one is probably the weakest shade, and that's not to say it's not pigmented, because it is. But because it's a lot lighter, it doesn't show as much as the others. And then we've got almost a whole row of shimmers at the bottom. So you've got Natalie, which is a lighter blue, and then you've got it with Veronique. And again, these shades stay true to what's in the pan. These blues especially, I've said before, they tend to go very black sometimes when you use them, and it doesn't come out true, but these are. And you've got Caroline, which is this beautiful lavender. Delphine, now that one has got a little hint of colour changing. It's mainly purple, but I think there's definitely a little bit of a blue base in there, because you can see the blue base coming out. And the final two for this palette, we've got Elodie and Aurelie. So we've got another shimmer, and then Aurelie is like a browny shade, but it is like a red based brown, I think. So again, the performance on those shades is amazing. I can't really fault them in any way. There was still one more out at this point, and that was Martine's Diner. This comes in a really nice retro case. It's got the Martine Cosmetics logo on it again. It's kind of like a fake pleather, which is like the seats in diners, which I thought was a really, really nice touch. And you've got that classic checkers in there with the mirror. And these are the shades. Again, you've got a good balance here of mattes and shimmers. So ratio-wise, so you've got 10 mattes and 7 shimmers. So there is slightly more mattes, but there is still a good balance. And you'll notice again that they're all embossed now. So where it was the odd one on some of the palettes, this one has continued it throughout the entire palette, which I really like. But sometimes I do find that when they've got these little logos on, I feel a little bit on edge using them. I know that sounds silly, but they look so pretty that I really don't want to ruin the shades. But in saying that, I do tend to kind of work around using the product from the edge out so that I don't damage it too much. At some point it will rub off, I know that. Right, so the first ones we've got Peggy. Peggy is kind of like a pearlescent white. And then you've got a complementing Sandy, which is the second one, which is pure white. So that's a very, you can see with Peggy, it's like a shimmer. And then that one is pure white. That is a pure matte white, but look how pigmented that is for a white. Usually when you get white, it's kind of stunted. Patty is like a very baby pink. And then you've got Darlene, which kind of looks like another white, but it isn't. When you see it in the pan and then you see it actually off camera, it's kind of like a very, very light blue. But it does have sort of that silver blue to it. So it does sometimes pull the light to make it look slightly white. So I would say if you're using those two shades, I probably wouldn't use Peggy and Darlene together. Now going along, we have Betty, which is a matte yellow. Very pigmented for a pastel shade, which is really surprising. Linda has got that sort of red, again, burgundy hue to it. Jenny, that is another blue. It's very, very light turquoisey blue, and you can see it there when I hold it, but again, it does pull a lot of white light from it. And then Karen is silver, but it does actually look silver. It reminds me of glitter balls and things like that. So it's very sort of, probably slightly more 60s, I'd say. So we have Martine, and that one is kind of like a orangey colour, I think. Yeah, it's probably like a peach, I'd say. Then you've got Cheryl, which is one of my favourites. It's like a cherry bomb colour. So it's very cherryish, but it's very glimmery as well. There was a shade like this in another palette that I got, which I really loved, but it just doesn't perform well, and it's quite disappointing, whereas this one does. Then you've got Brenda here, which is that sort of shimmery baby pink. And then Candace. Now, it looks a little white, but when you see it up close, it's actually a very sort of mute lilac colour. If you like sort of brighter colours, this is probably one of the palettes that you'd prefer. So Debbie, you've got that matte powder blue, followed by Harper, which is a matte green. Tammy is a matte brown. And then you've got Sunny, which is a mustard. I can see a couple of the ladies from Greece in here. There's at least 3. And then to finish off, we've got Frenchie, which is brown, and also Susie, which is black. You can see with those 3 palettes why I keep buying them, because they're consistent in quality and the packaging is just beautiful. It's probably one of my favourite brands, if I'm honest. I will say at this point that these were all purchased with my own money. I don't have PR or anything like that. It's just, I really love the brand, and that's why I'm showing them to you. The next one that came along was Mission Triple X. Very Matrix looking. Comes in this sort of like Secret Mission styly box. So it looks like the sort of box that you'd keep a bomb in or something like that in the Bond films. And again, it's got the Martine logo on it there. Slightly different one this time though. It's kind of been merged together to make it look like an M, which is quite cool. Inside it is a little bit flatter. This is one of the thinner boxes, and again you get a mirror and all of the shades. This one is very sort of neon-y as well, but it's also quite grungy, so this is almost like a combination of the others. So I'm going to go along and do the same thing that I've done with the others and show you all the shades. The reason I'm doing this, and obviously you can skip it if you find it boring, but I wanted people to get a true representation of each palette, because some of them do look similar, and it gives you a better idea of which palette you'd like to buy if you wanted to try the brand. Right, so the first one we have here is Parker, and that is like a shimmery green. And then you've got Joan, which is silver, Kane, which is black, and Jones, which seems to flick between, I think it's like a brown and a green is the way I would describe it. Now this one doesn't have as many of the embossed logos on it. So some of them are embossed, but not all of them are. That one is embossed, you can see, just like, it's almost like a Kevlar pattern. And then you do have the X's on there. It seems like we've stuck to Martine Triple X and just the Kevlar one on this one. This does have some of that softer shimmer to it that could easily have your fingerprints mess it up. And so for that reason, I am using the swiper on Gorman for that. So that one is Carter, which is a matte white. Now, although it's a matte white, it's got a slight, almost green tinge to it, but it's really nice. You've got Bishop, which I think is named after aliens. Gorman. Now that is another one that's brown and green, so it pulls together. But whereas the other one pulled maybe more brown, this one pulls more green, I'd say. And that's Brett, which is really neon yellow. It sometimes surprises me, even now, when I swatch these and I see how pigmented they are, because I'm hardly touching them. So we have Dallas there, which is a neon green. And then Ripley. Ripley's very much a purple. You can see a slight pink in it sometimes if you hold it right. Dwayne. Now in the pan, this is kind of like almost a reddy browny shade, but it does seem to be pulling some kind of lavender, which is quite nice. And Vasquez, that's like a gunmetal. I would say that if you were getting just one of them, you'd have a hard choice to pick between this one and the Halloween one, because they do have some similar shades in there. The other thing you've got to bear in mind with these palettes is they seem to disappear quite quickly. So whether they're limited edition, I don't know, but some of them will be on the website, some of them won't. So if you do see one you want, just grab it. A lot of mine I had to track down off individual sellers because they just weren't available anymore. And getting people to part with them isn't easy. Again. So that's Crow. And Crow is sort of like a charcoal grey, I'd say, dark charcoal. Ash is another shimmer purple, but this is a lot lighter and pulls a lot more blue. Maman, I think it is a darker grey. Maman, not sure how it's pronounced. And Hudson is another gunmetal, but this is lighter. So if you swatch the two side by side, they do look different. They're not the same shade. And the last two we've got is Ferro, which is this really beautiful green. It's kind of like a metallic olive green. And then you've got Ron, which is, it's more of a charcoal black, I'd say, like a grey, but it does have silver flecks in it, so it's got a bit of glitter in it. The good thing about the glitters in these shades as well is they're very fine, and so although they do show on the eyes, they don't go all over your face as well, which I really hate with eyeshadow. Next came the Christmas palette, and I was really, really excited about this one. It's called Martine Fedusky, and the packaging again is absolutely beautiful. Even the outside boxes are beautiful, but I didn't keep them because I just don't have the space for them. This one looks like a ugly sweater. It's got the Martine logo on again. It's got like a slight raised texture to the box, so it feels not quite like a jumper, but you can see where the sort of thought is going. Inside, even the mirror is really pretty. It's got like this little curtain design on there, which is really cute. And look at the shadows. They are amazing. All stunning, all embossed. I just love it. This was the point when this was out, and so was the Odin's Eye Christmas palette. And at the time, I didn't get either. The Odin's Eye completely sold out and I couldn't get it. And I was absolutely devastated because they were all my kind of shades. This was the second closest in shades to those. At some point, I will do a comparison because I did manage to get one of the Odin's Eye palettes. I managed to get one off someone that was an individual seller. Paid over the odds slightly. It wasn't too bad, but it was more than it should have been because it was limited edition. And then they re-released it this year. So I'm going to try and grab another one if I can, so I've got a spare. Although that sounds excessive, I do use them a lot and I really don't want to sort of end up missing out again. But yeah, this was one of my favourite ones, colour scheme wise. It really does have a lot of those Christmas shades in, lots of shimmers, which I really love. You actually get 12 shimmers in this one, and then the rest are mattes, just so that you've got a comparison. So if you're like me and you love your shimmer shades, this is probably one of the palettes for you. It isn't around anymore, but you can try and get hold of one. Somebody might be selling an individual one. If you can get your hands on it, fully recommend it. Doesn't look like I've used it. I have used it, but I've used it very, very sparingly, and you don't need a lot of product because it's really pigmented, but I don't want it to run out too soon because I really love it. I'm going to show you the shades now. So the first one is Vero. That is a really good matte red. You can see it's more of a lighter red rather than a blue red. You've got this shimmery one here. This is Coro, and that's pure gold. Val is like a matte brown. This would be a really good transition shade because it's sort of like a taupey shade. And then you've got, I think it's Gege. I don't know how it's pronounced. Gege, could be Gege. That's like a mustardy yellow, but it's not quite the same as the other mustard one in the other palette because it's got a lot more green to the base of it. So is a forest green, very much like Christmas trees, which is interesting. So it has a Christmas tree on the picture. And then you get a lovely shimmery green to go next to it, which is VV, which is a dark, not quite forest green, but a dark green. Then you've got this beautiful shimmery red here called Fanoche, I think it is. And then Steph, which is also a shimmery red, but that's lighter. I think that's very much like the one that's in the other palette. In the retro palette, the cherry bomb one. It's a very similar shade, not the same. I'd probably say it's just maybe a touch darker. This one is Christian, and this is a very similar shade to what's in the first palette in the 669, and you can see from there that it's pretty much a pink. So it's a stronger pink shade than I think in the other one, and it does kind of have a little bit of a bronzy base. The bit at the top there is from the other shade, so ignore that. This one here is Juju, and it's a green based but with more yellow in it. And then you've got this beautiful colour here, which is Isa, which is a bit like a frosty blue. And then you've got Jean-Mich, which I think is after Jean-Michel. And that's a very much similar shade to the other one. It's kind of like a greeny stroke bronzy shade, kind of pulls in the two colours together, I think. So you can see that over the palettes, if you had them all, you might get some that are very slightly, I'd say similar. I don't think they're exactly the same. I don't think they're repeats, but they are similar shades. You've got Cocoa, which again is similar to the one from the Halloween one. Then you've got Lulu, and you know I mentioned that sort of shade of brown before. Nataloche, I think that is, which is the shimmery white, similar again. And then we've got Ore, which is like a foresty green shimmer. I think if you liked most of the palettes but wanted like a best of, I would say that out of the ones that were released up to this point, this is kind of like a best of. It's got all the shades that I really like in it, and I've realised what that Gigi shade is. It's matcha, I think they call it, matcha green. And finally we have Fabienne, which is also a matcha, but it's kind of like a shimmery one. And then Dede, which is a black. Now, although it is a deep black, I think it would need building to be very like purest black, but it is a nice black. So that's that one. Next, they released this one. It came in this sort of like pleather case, which I think is supposed to be like representative of ladies' handbags and things like that. The palette itself is called Moula, so it's based around money. When you open it up, it looks like a little wallet, which I think, again, that's probably what it's supposed to be on the outside, more like a wallet than a handbag. And then the palette itself looks like a credit card. I like this palette from the fact that the insert comes out, the actual palette, it's not stuck within the box like the others, and also it's really thin. So this one is my favourite to carry around because it's a lot easier. The other thing about this one I like is there's quite a range of greens. It's basically almost a greens palette. So if you're sort of into your monochrome palettes, it's a good one to have. This one is thoroughly embossed, so it's got all of the little symbols on all of the shades. So they sort of really went to town on this one a bit. Christine, that's kind of like that off-white shade, like a cream, which I did see in one of the other palettes. I think it was the retro one. Liliane, I've not seen that shade in any of the others. It's kind of like an orange. Then you've got Miranda, which is a green, but it's a matte green, and it's kind of like a, well, it's money green, isn't it? And then Constance, which is really interesting, make really good highlighter because it's white, but it's also green. So it's a very green based shimmery white, which would really work well. There's quite a lot of shimmers in this palette. You get 10 shimmers for the price, and considering the quality of the shimmers, it's well worth it. So Celeste is a gold, and then you've got Francois, another shimmery green, bit like the one in the Christmas palette. Agnes Marie, which is like that retro green, and then Nadine, which is pulling on lilac in a silver. Antoinette is a yellow shade. Michelle, that's another one of the reflects. Now that is actually more of a brown, but it does have a lot of yellow in it, so it sort of pulls a lot of yellow in there. That one, sorry. And you've got Daphne, which is a metallic orange almost, which I've not seen in any of the other palettes, I don't think. And Adelaide, which is the blackest of blacks that I've seen. Now that really does come out black, it's not messing. Augustine, that's kind of like a bronzy yellow. Pure matte sort of brown shade. Amanda, it's very sort of, I don't even know how to describe that brown, but Catherine, that's quite an unusual shade. It's kind of like a gold, but it's got a lot of maybe yellow in it. And Rosalie is a dark brown. We've got Marie Louise, which is a really nice green, pure matte. That's Regina, and that is a white shimmer, but it pulls a lot of green. So again, that would make quite a nice highlight. The next one that was released was called Martine's Nitro Speed. It's based on the Speedways, and it's got a very sort of nitro stroke neon theme to it, which I really love. The packaging isn't quite as flash. It's still got a really nice embossed box, and it's very shimmery. That's not to say that it's not beautiful. Pack it in. No. But out of all of them, it's probably the least fancy. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, as well as long as the shades perform. But what you have, although you've got less packaging, shut up. Instead of 18 shades, you've actually got 24. So you get a lot more shades for the value, which, to be honest, I'd prefer. Although I love fancy packaging, give me more shades. Now, a lot of these names I've recognised from Fast and the Furious. So we've got Letty, which is orange, but it's a very sort of coral-based orange, and it's matte, which I really like because it's different to the other orange mattes I've seen in the palettes. Renato, that's again got that sort of yellowy shimmer to it, which I have seen in the other palette. Nitro, haven't seen in any of the other palettes. Really strong neon green. I've seen neon greens, but not that sort of limey shade. And then we've got Vince there, which is another reference to Fast and the Furious. I don't know how many of them are because I don't know all of the films, but I'm just telling you the names that I recognise from things as we go along. We've got Tanner, which is that sort of lilac-y shimmer again, and Alvaro, which is a very true matte blue. You've got Pure Pink, which is Raquel, and Brian, which is very unusual shimmery brown. Again, all of the shadows on this palette are embossed, so all of them have the logos with the fancy little things embedded into them. Julia, yellow. Anita, it's that shimmery light green again. Larissa, which although it's pink does pull hints of yellow in there, I think, or maybe orange, depends on the light. And one called Tej Parker, I don't know what that is. Right, so we've got Dino, which is pure silver. Mia, which is pink. Benny, that's the one that I've been using a lot, it's like a matte retro. And Dom, again, Fast and Furious. You've got Monica there. Mario, possibly Mario Brothers. DK, which is probably Donkey Kong. And Toby. So you've got the whites. Well, you can see what shades they are. So that one is Moramito, which is a very sort of red-based neon. Then we've got Slapjack, which is an orange. Finn. You can see that that is purple, but also pink. That's a colour reflect change one, which is really pretty. No, sorry. Finn, which is purple. And then Luke, which is another one of those colour reflect changes. So it's kind of got hints of both. You can see there, it's like a reddy shade, also a pinky shade. And I'd say that's probably a multi-chrome because there's orange in there as well. That's a really pretty shade. And the last but not least, latest release from Martine Cosmetics was their new Halloween one, which means I've gone a full year of buying their palettes. This one looks like a little shark. It's called Mayday, and you can see the sort of Martine logo is etched into it. It's slightly raised and feels like gills, and the box feels kind of like smooth, like a shark skin would. Not that I suggest you go around touching sharks. And the colour scheme is beautiful. They've kept the embossing onto the middle of the shades here, which is fine by me because, again, I don't like rubbing them when they've got things on them. And this is all kind of sea colours, so it's all kind of sharky and dark, and I really like it actually. So the first one we've got is Chrissy, and that is like a shark grey. And then you've got Mike, and that is like a blue. Ellen, that's a pure silver white. And Bart is again this sort of like a darky purpley grey, which again reminds me of sharks, probably like the darker part of a shark. I really like the fact that there's a lot of theme to these palettes as well. So like, even with the colour scheme, a lot of thought goes into them. So you can tell that this one is all sea shade. Going along we have Brody, which is a metallic blue. And then you've got Larry, which is matte. Another matte shade here in grey, just ignore the shimmer underneath it. That's literally called matte. Matte is matte. And Leonard. We've got Nancy, which is shimmer blue. Ben, which is actually a matte blue, but it's powder blue, so it's very light. Amity, probably named after Amityville maybe, but reminds me of like blood red sharks. And Polly. Polly's an interesting shade. It looks blue in the pan, but it does pull more black. So it's like a very dark midnight blue. We've got Calvin, which is another grey shade, like a taupe. Bruce, which is a shimmery blue. Malibu, which is another powder blue, but probably more sky colour. And Martin, which is a dark powder blue. One more set to show you. Alex, another sort of grey blue. And Sean, which is black. There is a lot of sort of grey blues in here and blues, but they are all different if you look at them. They're not the same. So it's really good if you wanted to do blends with that palette. I'm really hoping that they release another Christmas palette. I did ask, but I didn't get a response on that. So it might be being kept under wraps, or it could be because I replied in English and they speak French. I don't know. But I think you can see why I like the brand now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a quick eye look with you so that you can actually see the quality of them on the eyes. I think if we start on the outer corner with a darker blue, And I'm going to go for Alvaro, which is this one here, because that's quite a dark blue, just so that you can see that the blues do come out the shade they're supposed to. So that's the colour it shows on the brush, which is the same colour it shows in the pan, and it does go on that colour when you apply it to your eye. I want the blues to look completely different. Going to now go in with Benny. I think I'm going to pull that one all the way across. There's so many combinations you could do with this palette, because you've got all of the shimmers and you've got all of the mattes and you've got a full range of neon here. So you could literally do any neon look you wanted. And I know especially summertime, neons are really popular. I do like the combination of these two blues together though. Whether it's because they sort of blend well, I don't know, but I just think the combination of a lighter and darker blue work really well. I'm just going to make that a bit more intense. I'm loving actually how this is working out. Although it wasn't done on purpose, it's kind of giving a bit of a grey there as well, where the two colours have combined, which I really, really like. And I'm going to take a very small brush now. This is a BH Cosmetics one. I really like it because it's very tiny. This is a 106. But it's easy to pick up the pigment that's really sort of sparkly. And it's good for just dabbing it on the corner of the eye. And it doesn't just look like you've put a random blob there. It does actually look like it's supposed to. I just want to take a little bit of that lilac and just add it onto the inner part there. So that little look was done using this shade here, this shade here, a very small amount of that, and a little bit of this one. 4 shades and a look. And there we have the Martine Cosmetics eyeshadow range. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Please give it a like and please subscribe and follow me to see more. You can also check out my Instagram account, which is also Chameleon Makeup, where you can see various makeup looks and other such things like swatches and creative makeup. Until next time, take care. I'll see you soon. Thanks for watching.